Magomed Ankalaev is gonna destroy Alex Pereira, and UFC 307 has only filled me with more confidence. So let's get into it. So in the fight against Roundtree, Pereira started off with a crazy high kick, and he kept throwing it throughout the fight. It was ineffective in my opinion. The only real kicks that were hurting Roundtree were the teeps, but Roundtree actually hurt Pereira off one of the head kicks, but luckily for Pereira, Roundtree landed with the follow-up shot. He landed with the wrist as opposed to his fist. So I don't see any kicks to the body or the head being an effective tool for Pereira against Ankalaev, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. Now, this next slide shows Khalil Roundtree landing a head kick of his own during the fight, which hurt Alex Pereira. And it's a tool that Ankalaev also likes to use throughout his fights. It's an effective tool against Pereira because he keeps his hands super, super low. I think the problem for Roundtree during this fight was that he did a lot of the hard work, but didn't follow up. He would explode and he would throw a 3 to 4 punch combination, but he needed to throw more because he was reaching and missed a lot of the shots. When he dropped Pereira, he should have pounced on him, I think. Ankalaev is going to do that. We've seen him be super aggressive. We've seen his aggression against the likes of Walker and Anthony Smith. He can walk you down, and I'd expect him to do so against Alex Pereira because Pereira's not a counter puncher, right? Not only that, but Pereira is at his most dangerous when he's pushing you back, has you up against the cage. That's when he's most dangerous. We've seen it against Izzy, so against Roundtree in this fight. And I think Roundtree, if he was a bit more aggressive after exploding in, I think he could have done something. He could have done something. But look, I mentioned the kicks, and I mentioned why I don't think they're going to be effective against Ankalaev, and this is exactly why I don't think it's going to be effective. So here we've got Pereira throwing a kick. I believe it's a head kick. And here we've got Adesanya catching the kick. Now, after he threw the kick and Pereira caught it, Izzy then proceeded to do this. He pulled him in, right, and he got the body lock in place. What he then did was place his left leg behind Pereira's left leg, which put him off balance. He then manipulated and shifted Pereira's weight off that front foot, spun him towards his left side, and took him down. Now, let me show you a quote from Pereira really quickly. So here we've got Alex Pereira saying, "Everybody talks about Ankalaev's ground game, but they don't know my ground game. So let's talk about your ground game, Alex Pereira, because I don't think it's that good." As you can see here, right, Izzy has control of Pereira's right wrist. You can see it here. So I'm doing it real quick. So he's got wrist control over Pereira, right? And what he's trying to do is flatten him down and stop him from posturing up, which he needs that right arm to do. However, Pereira's left arm right here is completely free. It's completely free, and this is just awful from Pereira, right? The position of his arm, what he should be doing is trying to get that whizzer, right? Wrapping that arm around and under Izzy's right arm, because it would stop Izzy from being able to take his back. From this position, it would be so easy for Izzy just to slip under that left arm and just take the back. Like, Pereira's arm should be around here, around Izzy's arm, getting underneath it to stop him from... Because you lock his arm in place and he can't take the back. But from here, he could just slip his head out and take Pereira's back. So here, Izzy pushes him further towards the cage. And notice Pereira's arm. It's still here over his head. It's still there. He just hasn't adjusted the position of his left arm, and even if he was just a posture into his guard, it would have been better, you know, taking Izzy into his guard, because what ends up happening is this. So Izzy slips from underneath Pereira's left arm, and he takes Pereira's back. And essentially from this position, right, Izzy controlled him for the rest of the round. He landed some good ground and pound. Pereira pretty much had no answers. This is Izzy, right? This is Adesanya. We don't see Adesanya wrestle very often. And so what's gonna happen when the Dagestani Magomed Ankalaev gets Pereira into his position, right? A position he's very comfortable in, and who also has better ground and pound than Izzy, because we saw what he did to Anthony Smith. He just tortured him on the ground before getting the finish. I feel like the fight getting to this position is inevitable, and I can't see Ankalaev not finishing him from this position. So here's Pereira against Yuri Prohaska. Once again, some devastating ground and pound. Yuri was just pummeling him with elbows, and funnily enough, right, Yuri actually got to this position from being aggressive. Something Roundtree was missing. I was watching the fight. I was like, Roundtree's doing really, really well here. I just wish he followed up, was a bit more aggressive after landing those 3-4 shots. He should have thrown even more after he threw that 3-4 shot combination, because not all the punches were landing. But Yuri was the aggressor here. He was pushing Pereira up against the cage, and going for takedowns. And I think the blueprint is there for Ankalaev. When on the feet, be aggressive, because like I said before, Pereira is not a counter puncher, right? You have to be fearless when throwing your shots, just like Yuri was. And Yuri wobbled him during this fight. He hurt him in their first fight. Although I realised the irony in considering what I just said, because Yuri was dropped by a counter right hand from Pereira, and Clive just has to keep his hands up, right? None of this MVP flipping hands low karate stance like Yuri was doing during this fight, which also cost him in the second fight. But here, once again, Pereira showed the same tendencies in this fight as he did against Izzy. It was bad position for that left arm again, right? Not as bad as it was against Izzy, right? You can see he's desperately kind of just trying to pull Yuri in, but it's just so easy for Yuri here to keep that separation, right, between him and Pereira, and to land those elbows, right, because that's what he was going for, landing those elbows. Pereira just needs to lock up that right arm of Yuri. That's what he needed to do, by getting his arm over and locking it, or getting that underhook to keep Yuri in close to avoid that separation and stop eating those elbows. But what happens is, Pereira, in a rush to get up, he wraps that arm over Yuri's shoulder. And look, he got away with it, right? In this fight, he got away with it. But the same way Izzy did, Ankalaev is going to slip under that arm and take the back, right? Ankalaev is just going to slip under it. I mean, it's going to be so easy. He's wrapped it all the way around. Yuri's shoulder and up against the cage. Ankalaev is just going to slip straight under it and take his back. Now let's talk about Dana White, right? Here's what Dana White had to say in regards to Ankalaev being Pereira's next potential opponent.
Listen, Ankalaev's ranked number 2. He goes out and puts on an unbelievable performance, and Alex is still the champion, then he's next. Right.
An unbelievable performance, Dana. Let's have a look at the rankings really quick, shall we? Right, so you got the light heavyweight division. Number 1, you got Yuri Prohaska, who lost to Pereira twice. Your Jamahal 3. Jamahal number sorry, Jamahal Hill in number 3. He's coming off a loss to Pereira. Jan Blachowicz, number 4. Coming off a loss against Alex Pereira. And then you've got Alexander Rakic, the guy who's coming off a loss against Yuri Prochazka. So you've got Magomed Ankalaev here sitting in number 2, the only one in the top 5 that's not coming off a loss. You know, maybe Dana wants Rakic to beat Ankalaev, right? Because then he can protect his cash cow. And he'll get another stand and bang matchup. Because that's exactly why Khalil Rountree got the title shot. Right? These stand and bang matches, you know, the fans love them. Yeah, there's just a high chance that Pereira is gonna win that matchup because he's the best striker in the division. Look, man, I think I can understand. I mean, Dana White said, right, that he didn't want Pereira to move up to heavyweight and fight a guy like Tom Aspinall because of the problems that Aspinall would cause Pereira. Taking him down, it's just a completely different world. And like what I showed you with what Yuri and Adesanya did to Pereira, imagine what Ankalaev's going to do to him. What Aspinall would do to him. He's just not that great on the ground, Pereira. He struggles. When he's on the ground, his style is just to kind of pull his opponent in close and stop that separation, stop them from landing that ground and pound. But he doesn't do it effectively. Like I showed you, his arm, instead of getting a whizzer, locking up the opponent's free arm, he just kind of lackadaisically, if that's even a word, just kind of leaves it on over the top of their head, drapes it over the top of their head, which they can just slip under and take his back. So I think Ankalaev is going to be a big, big problem for Alex Pereira. So my final thoughts on this fight. Ankalaev saying he's not going to wrestle and that he's going to strike. Look, I do believe that he could still win on the feet, but I feel like instinct will take over and make him wrestle after he feels Pereira's power. Whether that's a left hook, a straight right, a jab, a calf kick, whatever that is, that wrestling is something that he can fall back on, just like he did against Blachowicz. And I don't think Ankalaev will wrestle as much as he should, you know, during this fight. And I think he'll feel like that's going to lead to the fight being closer than it actually should be. But Ankalaev he's still going to win. He's still going to win. Moving on, just briefly wanted to talk about this. There needs to be something implemented into that rule book, right? When it comes to controlling your opponent, but without the intention to do anything, right? This fight, I had the first round going to Bautista, I had the next two going to Aldo. Giving the third round to Bautista was mental, in my opinion. He hugged Aldo the entirety of the round, just like Merab did to O'Malley for large parts of their fight. And Dana talked about wanting the refs to step in quicker in order to decentivize the fighter from just holding on to another fighter's legs for dear life. Conor McGregor suggested some sort of timer that kind of ticks down when you keep going back to that same position. But something needs to be done. I mean, just look at the significant strikes in that third round. How can you give that to Bautista? How? It's mental. Something needs to be done. I mean, it feels like an exploit at this point, right? It should not win you a fight. You hug your mum. You don't hug Jose Aldo or your opponent, right? It's not enjoyable to watch for the fans, for the casual or the hardcore fans, because there's no intention to do damage. There's no advancing in position. They're not going for, a submission either. It just stinks and it needs to change. And it was also an Aldo, right? Because he just had his back up against the cage the entire fight. I'm not sure why. He kind of did it to himself as well. But I thought I'd include this bit, right? Just real quick.
10K for the first UFC bantamweight to leave Mario Bautista unconscious on the floor in the canvas.
I just thought I'd include that just because I thought it was quite jokes from Google. Just imagine someone actually knocks Mario Bautista out stiff, right? And then they go on the mic and they say, "MMA Guru, 10 G's, baby." That would just be so elite. Well, I understand his anger, right? It's just, but at the end of the day, you got Aldo who did more damage, but he's losing the fight to control, but control with no intention. You know, and it's not fair because obviously win bonuses and whatnot, they all matter. So you're taking money from the man, mate. Well, because he lost a hugging match. It's not fair. Right, but that's all I've got to say. That's the UFC 307 aftermath. Just stay around for more content.